Hi, everybody. Welcome to Psychology in the Soul. I'm spiritual medium and psychotherapist Kellee White, and I'm with my dearest friend.
And I'm Dr. Shirley Impellizzeri with my dearest friend.
And we're going to talk about daddy issues. How
Yes.
great is that?
Very, very interesting and important topic.
Yeah, it's really an important topic.
Yeah.
Really important, Shirley, that we, I know that I'm making a joke about it, probably because I have worked on these for myself.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, right. And of course, with our clients, with your patients and my clients, we've talked a lot about father issues.
Right.
So again, and I don't want to, I don't want to dismiss any of this, and I don't want to reduce to a stereotype,
right.
Because you've probably heard anybody say, even therapists, well, they don't have father issues, or they've got daddy issues. And people will laugh and they'll say, like, really tell me about yours, or I'll tell you about mine.
Right.
But, really, we really are going to talk about what it really does mean to have a father issue.
Well, but, if we summarize it just in one simple concept, daddy issue, just like a mommy issue, right, is about what we didn't get. This is our father that we. That's really what it is. And we've, it's daddy issues, kind of a funny word and, funny term, but that's truly what it is.
That's it in a nutshell, Shirley.
Yeah. We're looking for what we didn't get.
Yeah. It's so true. And, again, and I want to say something really important here, that this conversation is not about blame. So I don't want to blame any of the men watching out there or anything about blaming. It's really about understanding our first relationships and how they shape us, because every parent, whether it's a mother or a father, parents go through their own lens of their own experiences here. And so some fathers, love deeply, but maybe they didn't know how to show it. Some desperately wanted to be present, but they carried wounds of their own. Some were physically present, some are emotionally absent. It's all about it. We're not trying to create villains here. It's really understanding. And from where I'm coming from, and I will talk about this a little later, spiritually, to me, it's about acceptance.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to work through how it affected us before we can reach acceptance. People want to jump to acceptance right away without validating how it felt to you as a little kid, and maybe how it continues to affect you as an adult. And I love, what you say, because it never is about blame. It's about understanding. If we understand it, yes, as adults, it's our responsibility to then heal that wound, either through therapy and different work. So it's really important to, people say really off the cuff, well, how long are you going to blame your parents? No, you have to understand where something came from. And yes, it's up to you to.
I don't know about you, Shirley, but earlier on, I blamed my dad for so many things. I would just blame. I stopped doing that after a certain period when I realized, wait a minute, what was going on. And it just makes all the difference in the world when you just, stop the blame and then really can look at things.
Right. Because the blame can be limiting. Blame means, yes, they caused it. Yes, they did. Our parents caused it, just like I caused issues for my own daughter, right? Without knowing it. It's also important to understand they didn't do it on purpose. Just like you said a moment ago, they came from their own trauma, their own healed wounds. So it wasn't done on purpose. That's an important piece to keep in mind. So when we use the word blame, they did it.
Right.
However, we can't stay just there with the blame.
Not where we are now in the world. I think it's time to start looking at your own self, your own, what their backgrounds were. And, this is a question that everybody can ask themselves. Like, how did the relationship with your father shape the way you see yourself today? Really? And for me, I can certainly tell you my story, because I was stuck for years in the blame game of this. I finally had to choose a different lens in order to see my dad. And so what I can tell you is that my father was physically gone all the time. He was a jazz musician and he was on tour all the time. And jazz musicians, they think differently. They respond differently. Their brains are different. But again, I'm a little kid. I don't know that. Then, my dad was an alcoholic. He was a drug addict. He was all of these things.
Yeah.
And he was complicated because he was very loving. He was very loving and yet also completely unavailable.
Yeah.
It was the damnedest thing. And so I was angry for years because, one of my literally clearest memory was being about 10 years old. And I was at my Girl Scout meeting, and my dad would come and pick me up, every Wednesday from my Girl Scout meeting. And he'd just be smoking a joint out in front. I don't know, Cheryl, something was off.
Wow. Yeah.
So I would get, very angry. I was angry all the time.
Yeah.
But then what happened is, and this was what helped get me unstuck with this, is I didn't really want anything to do with him. But he died. And when he died, we had a memorial, and we had about 300 people at his memorial. And I had to get up and I had to speak. And I remember saying, what in the world am I going to talk about here? Like the Girl Scout story? Am I going to say that? What am I going to say in front of 300 people? And so I did not know what to do. And I started talking to Spirit, and I'm like, and then all of a sudden it dawned on me, I really should talk about this from a spiritual standpoint. And then I remembered, when I opened up to that moment, why did I choose this father, as opposed to the blame, I'm pissed off because he's still this and he's still that, and it caused me all kinds of nightmares. Instead, I asked myself the question that I ask people all the time: why did you choose that father? Why did you choose that one? Of all the gin joints, why did I choose that one? Right. And so when that came out, then it opened up an area of energy for me. And when I opened up that energy of that area for me, then I could look at it and say, wait a minute, I know why I chose him, because he was so creative. He was so creative. And then I had a huge memory, and I write about this in my book, that when I was about 10 years old, I knew my dad very well. And one day I was home and I said, Dad, can I have a quarter? Because I want to go ride my bike. I knew not to bother him. Just give me a quarter. I'm going to go buy a cake mix at the store, and I'm going to make you a cake. Thinking this, how I didn't know the term narcissism at the time, but I figured that, this will work. And right. I just wanted to bake a cake, give me have 25 cents for a Duncan Hines little thing. And I'll ride my bike. He doesn't have to take me to the store. And my dad said, no. I said, what? It's a quarter. And he goes, no, no, I'm not going to. And I go, look, I'm not asking you to take me. I'm not asking you to do anything. Can I just have a quarter? And I can't tell you how much I really tried to negotiate this. And he goes, no. He goes, you go in the kitchen. We have all the ingredients, and just go make one. We didn't have the internet. My mother didn't have cookbooks. Right. I had to use my own creativity of what goes in a cake. Wow. I watched my grandmother make cakes often, both my grandmothers. And I was like, let me get this straight. I'm this big. I'm very tiny. I can't reach the oven. You want me to get in the kitchen, make a mess, and make a cake? And he goes, yeah. And I go, okay, I guess I have permission. So then I had to really come out with all this creative stuff. The eggs and the butter and the sugar and the flour.
But what a gift.
Well, it could have gone south really fast, because here's what happened. I end up doing all of this. I put it in the oven. I take it out of the oven. I couldn't even reach any of this. I didn't know anything about temperatures. By the luck of some angel on that side, I gave him a piece of cake, and he goes, now this is where it could have gone south. And my dad was as honest. If you wanted to ask him something, he was just going to be just very blunt.
Yeah.
And, so I risked, how bad could this be, right? Remember, I'm 10 years old. And he goes, babe, this is the best cake I ever had.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, at that moment, my creativity was just through the roof.
Wow.
And from that moment on, later on, I became an executive chef where his jazz musician friends would come into my restaurant and he'd be like, babe, cook for them anything. And that became the connection I had with my dad, the creativity piece and the food piece.
That example is such a wonderful, one example in our life can be a window into our whole life. I mean, it taught you to trust your creativity, which is huge.
I didn't even know I had it, Shirley.
Huge. Yeah.
I didn't know I had it. I didn't know anything about it. And then yet it was sparked. And so and how I got there, well, even to have that memory and then to put it all together was when I asked myself the question, why did I choose this man who was wildly challenging, like on every level? So I want everybody to kind of look at that, because people are still trying to answer those questions, as a child, am I enough? Was I lovable? Am I safe? Will somebody stay? And some of those questions follow us in adulthood. And believe me, some of those questions did, except that the bigger piece for me was that he gave me my creativity, like he sparked it.
Yeah, to learn what you got from them.
Yeah,
not always just that negative bias that we have, because we need to really understand that father wounds affect both men and women. They're not limited to just abandonment. Emotional absence, a father who's there but is not engaging, can be as impactful as physical absence.
Well, Shirley, tell about your father, because that's really, your father was physically present.
Yes. And, they influence our attachment, confidence, safety, and identity. So that is right there how you kind of form. They say that the same-sex parent teaches you how to be either a woman or a man, in life.
Okay.
The opposite sex parent teaches you your value.
Oh, so in our case, it would be the male teaching us the value. Oh, exactly. For sure.
Well, in that case, he taught you with that simple, kind of seemingly crazy request, go make your own cake. He taught you your value.
Yes, he did. As a matter of fact, I'm glad that you put that out there. Yes, he did. He did more than, and I got so much from my mom too, but that from the male perspective was huge for me.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you pointed that out. Thanks.
Yeah. Physical absence can create grief, because the person's not there. And so you have like this longing because they're not there.
Yeah.
Emotional absence creates confusion because they're there, but they're not engaging with you.
Well, was that your story?
Well, yeah. My father was there every day. He got home at 4:00 from work. We had dinner at 4:00 because he would come hungry. Nobody would talk.
He was an engineer, right?
He was an engineer, yeah. Okay. And then he'd go off to his office and do his, engineer stuff. And that was it. And there was no real communication. And
excuse me, did he hug you? Was he demonstrative? Was he loving? Was he?
No. We knew that he loved us.
Okay. How did you know?
Because he provided, because he was there. He wasn't, my parents never went out on their own. If they went out, they took us along, it was with other Argentine families who had kids and stuff. So everything, a home cooked meal every day. So everything was there except for the emotional piece. One of my therapists once time called it, I lived in an emotional desert. But what that does to a kid is it's kind of a double whammy. He's here, but he's not engaging with me. So I must not be worth engaging with.
Did you know that as a youngster?
I mean, I don't know if it was a conscious thought.
Okay.
But I certainly didn't grow up with the highest self-esteem thinking that, because what happens is, kids blame themselves. It would be too crazy making to think, there's something wrong with these two. Right?
See, I never went in that direction. I always do. I trusted myself. Something's off here.
Some people, well, you always had, the help of the spirituality on your side. But that would be too threatening because I depend on them to stay. So it's usually, and kids, they have a very natural developmental stage of egocentricity. So everything happens because of me.
Yeah.
That's why when kids are little and parents get divorced, it's because of me, because of that developmental stage that they go through, which is very natural. And so you think it's because of you, because you're not lovable enough, because you're not worthy enough. And that's the seed that gets planted.
Right.
And so emotional neglect can impact self-worth. In fact, one time, one of my teachers, Dr. Peter Levine, said, emotional neglect can have worse effects on the psyche than, other kinds of abuse, because there's no, you're not being mirrored. So it's almost like you get a sense of you don't deserve to even exist.
Oh, gosh.
That's a very deep, deep wound,
Right.
Yeah. So that took a long time. And when I was doing my own work, I was very angry at him. He just couldn't. I didn't understand the autistic piece, the Asperger piece. So we would go over to visit him, and 15 minutes of, hi, how are you doing? How's work? How are you doing financially? Do you need anything? Because we always knew that he always
would be there if you needed something.
He was always there. I mean, I'm 40 and 50, and he's still asking, how are you doing financially? Do you need anything? No, Dad, I'm okay. And 15 minutes later, he'd turn on the TV, or he'd walk outside and do some gardening.
So how did you have an acceptance of that?
Well, I would leave so angry and so hurt. Underneath the anger was so much hurt. As I started to work through my own, therapy, I'll never forget the first time I left my dad's house, my parents' house, and I felt disappointed. I didn't feel angry anymore. And that's when I knew that I had worked through and healed that wound. I still felt disappointed because we're still emotional beings.
Right.
It wasn't that anger.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I had the same thing. It was a disappointment when I let the anger go.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to, in order to let it go, people like to skip that step because we're so afraid of feeling anger. Anger is life force energy. It's a very important, emotion to feel. So to validate it, to get in touch with it, to even just name it, can help. But we have to, because otherwise we're not giving, what that little kid felt. How can a kid not feel angry if dad isn't engaging with them? Of course you're going to go into anger, but you have to suppress it because it's not okay. You might get in trouble and all that stuff. But it's important to get in touch with it to be able to process through it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And would you say that emotional availability shapes that secure attachment?
Oh, absolutely. Because emotional availability, when someone is attuning to me, what do you need? Or when they're playing with you, if someone is playing with me, that must mean I matter. If someone is asking me, what do you want for dinner? Are you hungry?
So that is emotional availability.
Exactly. That must mean I matter, that people care.
Right. Children really need that.
Right. Exactly. I mean, validation is essential for healthy development. It really is, from both parents, of course. In this case, we're talking about dads.
Right. Right. Wow. Well, I think that many fathers that are listening tonight, they might feel a little uncomfortable, but I actually want to pause here because this is not about saying that you should have been perfect, because no parent is, as we've talked about. It's really about recognizing something maybe that fathers were never taught. Like many men were raised, at least in my generation, Shirley, believing that providing, like your dad, equals loving, or working hard equals loving, or protecting equals loving.
Right.
Any of that. And while all of those things matter, as I think about those, I don't think I had any of that from my dad, but all of those things matter. Children also need something else. And I think what's so important is they need that connection. They need to know that my dad enjoys being with me. And how I would get my dad's attention when I really needed it is I'd bake him a pie, or I was into cheesecakes for a long time. In fact, I got so good that I ended up selling them to I had a boyfriend at the time who had a restaurant. His father had a really well-known restaurant. And so I started making cheesecakes for the whole restaurant.
Oh, how
fun.
fun.
I had all these jobs making and cooking, but it all stemmed from my dad because that was the only way I could get his attention. Pickles, he loved pickles. I'd be like, oh, okay, Dad, I'll make you some pickles.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Well, yeah, I mean, he really gave you that gift unknowingly, right? But
Totally.
because you were so creative, you ran with it, which is wonderful. There's this song, you're going to remember it.
Okay.
I don't know the title, in the 70s, which is the whole dynamic about, a little kid wants to play and the dad says, I'm too busy, I'm working, you ball with me. And then it turns around where the dad wants to spend time
Cat
with
Stevens. Wasn't that Cat Stevens?
Yeah,
Cat in the Cradle?
Yeah. Cats. It's a great song, which really, really puts words this dynamic.
Right. It's so true.
Because how a parent is with a child, it says everything about how strong the connection is, the attachment is.
Mm-hmm.
So if a father, spends time with a child, and they actually say it's 35%. So it's not like,
isn't that it? 35%.
That's what the research shows. Yeah. Then that child is going to be more apt to want to take care of the older father as they get older.
Yeah.
We did it, and I would talk with my sister. We did it out of obligation because in truth, he wasn't a mean person. He just didn't know. He didn't have the capacity. So we were there with him and we took care of him, until the end. If he had been abusive or something, that would have been a little bit different.
Right.
But, because you wouldn't have that pull. But he wasn't. He was a very kind man. He just didn't know how to connect.
Okay. And I had the opposite thing. I just could not be there because my dad was still using, and drugs and alcohol. I just couldn't do that. I just couldn't. I had to wait. How long does he have left? Okay. But then the wildest thing happened. And I've talked about this many times. Right after my dad died, I was like, I let go of any anger I had been holding on to.
Wow.
Anything, I let go of it.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I've noticed that so often that once it's almost like, while the parent is still here, especially if we've had a really traumatic experience, even if they live on a separate coast or in a different country, it's almost like that energy, you still feel that it's around,
For sure.
Once they pass, it's almost like it allows for this liberation.
That's it. That's the word. Liberation. Yeah. That was it. Oh my gosh. Shirley, I had this man that came to see me, and he was probably in his 40s, and he was really successful. He had a really good career. He was a really good husband. I would say he was an excellent father, but he kept saying to me, I'm not enough. I am not enough. And I said, tell me about your dad. Because whenever you hear that, it's coming from somewhere. And he's kind of smiled and he said, well, he was a really good man. He worked incredibly hard. Okay, here we go with his pattern. He never missed a day of work. Okay. He never hurt us. I said, did he ever tell you he was proud of you? And finally he said, I honestly don't remember. I mean, that's so important, and then he got really emotional. He said, he wasn't because his father abused him, but he spent all these years trying to encapsulate what it was about the dad. And, again, with men or even with women too, I did know that my dad was proud of me. Right. As long as I made cheesecake, he was proud of me.
Well, that was something, That was
something. But I felt so sorry for this guy.
Absolutely. And it's incredibly common, kids need approval. Approval seeking begins early in childhood. It's like when your kid is looking for you, when they're in a play and they're looking to see if you're there.
True.
They so much need approval, and when they don't get it, sometimes the need for achievement becomes overpowering, and the achievement as an adult becomes a substitute for connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because the success temporarily reduces the self-doubt. But if you haven't worked at what's under the hood, you're always going to need that next thing.
That's so true.
Because external validation never permanently heals the internal wounds. That's a separate thing. It could feel good in the moment,
right?
But it won't heal the deeper wound.
So children keep seeking that approval.
Oh, a child will, as an adult, when they haven't had it,
mm-hmm.
There's no awareness that this is what you needed and you didn't get, which is what therapy, one of the beauties of therapy is it helps bring into awareness what's in the unconscious, you will continue to seek approval for everything.
Right. Wow. It really makes me wonder how many adults still live as little boys or little girls, trying to earn something that was like possibly never theirs to earn in the first place, like love or acceptance or being enough, because children aren't supposed to audition for love. I mean, I've heard that many, many times. They're just supposed to receive it.
That's a beautiful way of
Isn't that
saying
a good way to say that?
Yeah, because it is. It's supposed to be a given. A father is supposed to, validate a child, say the things that they're good at, say that they're proud of them.
Right, right.
I mean, I have a client that I'm working with who is well in his 70s and is still needs that approval, that recognition.
Wow, wow. Well, and I'd love everyone to think about something. When you accomplish something, because this was a big thing, who are you hoping to notice that? When you're trying to accomplish something, who are you hoping to notice? And whose approval still matters most? Right, Shirley?
Yeah.
Because we will spend decades chasing that applause or, whatever we really want somebody to say, I'm really proud of you.
Yeah. Well, I have to say a lot of, not everyone, but a lot of the profession of entertainment
for sure
is about seeking love and approval from, millions of people. And again, unless you've worked through that wound, you're always going to need it. And it, again, you feel it in that moment, but then it disappears and you need it again.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Very true.
So important to, what you're asking is such an important question, because healing often begins when we become aware of what we're trying to earn, because truly it needs to come from the inside.
Yeah.
Well, it will always feel good when someone validates us, because we're hardwired to connect with people. So like if you validate me, that means you've seen me. That means I'm safe. That means I'm going to stay in your tribe. You're not going to kick me out. I'm not going to be alone in the jungle and die because I can't see the tiger behind me. Right. So there's a very evolutionary, so it will always feel good, even the person with the healthiest self-esteem. Yeah. Wow. But ultimately the work is where the validation needs to come from within.
Ultimately, yeah. Once we become aware, another question, like to me, that naturally begins to come out: if our fathers shaped the way we see ourselves, how much did they help shape the way we choose people to love in relationships? Because that's where this conversation becomes deeply personal for so many. Because I can tell you, because of my dad, I picked addicts along the way. Yeah. I just did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's where the term daddy issues comes, is you're trying to recreate what you didn't get.
Yes. Yeah. And narcissists too. Got a lot of those along the way.
Yeah. Well, yes. Thank you. Me too. Because and for me, it was, and what I discovered as I was doing my work is, the narcissists start with love bombing. And when you come from emotional neglect, to be the center of someone's world feels intoxicating, and it's something that you can't resist.
Yeah.
Really can't resist it, to feel like the center of someone's world when you felt completely unseen as a kid.
Wow, Shirley. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Something, Shirley, that you said earlier had stayed with me. You talk about how children naturally ask themselves, am I enough?
Yeah.
And I think that's so fascinating, because this can hit relationships 30 or 40 years later. And they might think, well, this is just who I am, or I'm just attracted to unavailable people. Well, you don't have to be. You can actually get some work on yourself. I always seem to end up with the wrong partner, because I've heard that one so many times. But what if those relationship patterns actually began much earlier, which we know they did? And can a father really shape the way that we love decades later?
Oh, absolutely. A father's often the child's first experience of masculine energy.
Okay.
Early attachment becomes a blueprint for future relationships. It does, because that's all we know. Children learn what love feels like before they understand what love is.
Yeah.
So if love feels like neglect, or if love feels like put downs and abuse and no interaction, that's my template for what love is. And Freud came up with the term, repetition compulsion, where we have a compulsion to recreate what we didn't get, recreate our traumas in order to try and heal them. Now, that alone doesn't work because, of course, we all have patterns, but it's so important and it's so valuable to not say, what's wrong with me, when you're noticing a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Their question, as Dr. Gabor says, is what happened to me? Instead of what's wrong with me.
I like that. What happened to me?
To understand why the pattern, what is it that you missed out in childhood that you can work on, heal that wound, feel it coming from within. And then you see a completely different, all of a sudden you're attracted to different people.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it over and over again.
I have too. And I love that you use the word blueprint, because I think that's so powerful, because nobody walks into adulthood with a blank slate.
Yeah.
They just don't. I mean, we are all carrying belief systems about love, about trust. I'll never forget, my mother said to me, I trust your father so much. And I'm like, boy, are we seeing the same guy? Because I have zero trust in that one. Like, safety? Let's see. No. And she would say, I feel so safe with him. And I'm like, how is that possible, right? That we would have two completely different experiences with the same person. But anyway, but those kind of belief systems are, written long before we start having romantic relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I remember, Shirley, I had a woman that I never forget. She said to me, every man I've ever loved eventually became emotionally unavailable. Have you heard this one?
Yeah.
And I asked her, immediately, as soon as you hear that, you go, oh, okay, tell me about your father.
Right. Like, or who was emotionally available in your life, because they learned it from somewhere.
They learned from somebody. And she got really quiet and she smiled and she said, she got it. And she said, I was my father. She said, I know he loved me, but he was always working. He was always tired. He was always distracted. And she said, she spent her whole childhood trying to get his attention. And there you go. I mean, that's why she would pick people in her life that were unavailable, because it was so familiar to her.
Exactly. Because familiar feels safe. The brain likes what's familiar because it can anticipate. Mm-hmm. The brain is an anticipatory organ. It wants to anticipate the future to be as best prepared for it as possible. Right. Yeah. So even when it isn't healthy, the brain will always choose what's familiar. And the nervous system is drawn towards recognizing it, because you've been, where two friends are together and one friend says, "Ooh, that guy's cute," and the other girl is like, "Doesn't say anything." That's because you're tuning into a familiarity.
Yeah. It's so funny. I remember I had a therapist once in Los Angeles. It was a male. And I had to stop seeing him because he looked just like my first ex-husband. And I was like, I can't do it. And then all my girlfriends were like, oh, he's so cute. He's the best therapist. And I'm like, oh, I was headed for the hills with that one, because we were going to talk about father issues and husband issues. And I'm like, yeah, not with that one.
Not with that one. It's so funny, but because sometimes when we come from a father who isn't available, emotional availability can actually feel unfamiliar, and that doesn't feel good.
Right.
We often mistake familiarity with chemistry.
Oh, talk about that for a minute.
Well, that's an important distinction, because, when you immediately, I had a colleague of mine that would say, whenever I meet somebody who I feel that connection with, that, immediate connection, I turn around and run the other way, because I know that I'm tuning into something, a trauma from my past. So we really have to discern and really get to know somebody before that, and when we heal, it truly changes who we are attracted to.
It does, because awareness then is not blame. It's understanding at this point. And I think that's really one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves, frankly, and our parents, is to stop expecting them to have been people that they never had the opportunity to become. And maybe spiritually, that wasn't the game in this lifetime. I mean, literally, what did you learn? Did you learn to take care of yourself then? Did you learn that you were good enough? What did you learn about yourself? Again, because I want to look at everything in a spiritual lens too, to open, why, again, I'll go back to that question. Why did you choose that particular father? Now, could there be karma there? Of course.
Yeah.
But bigger than that, what are you learning? Even from the real challenging experience, what did you learn? Did you learn compassion? Did you learn boundaries? That's a big one, I think that's really, really important. And the other thing is, a lot of men were not taught emotional language.
Right.
And that's a big one. I mean, when you get a male in therapy, sometimes you have to explain certain things. I used to have a wheel that had all the words on it, all the emotional words. And there were certain male clients that I had that I would give them this because they didn't have the ability to come up with the emotions themselves. So I would give them this wheel and they would read it and they go, oh yeah, that's that word, that word, that word. Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, we're getting somewhere.
And sometimes I would, I had this one guy who was in so much denial about his own, about his own experience and really minimized it, no big deal and stuff. And he loved his nephew. So that was my entry point. I said, how do you imagine your nephew would feel if his father did XYZ, whatever this man was telling me? And he just paused and he lost it. First time he was able to get in touch with how he might have felt as a kid, but we had to use another person because he couldn't get in touch.
But that you observed that crack and you could get in.
Yeah.
Because he loved the nephew.
Right. He loved the nephew so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and often it does take that as a therapist. You're sitting there watching and waiting for an opening so they can have that aha moment themselves, because then it's not just healing for them, it's healing then for everybody around them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Understanding creates perspective. The more you understand the why of something, the more we're able to then work on it and go from what's wrong with me to what happened to me. And compassion and accountability can coexist. We can acknowledge the pain without creating villains, as we were talking about this whole time. It's not about blame. You can love in this case, your father, and also be angry at some of the things that they didn't do or that they did do that were hurtful.
Right.
Those can coexist.
Right. And again, so many fathers parented from their own unresolved wounds.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
But what really confused me is that my father's father, my grandfather, was the kindest person in the world. I'm telling you, Shirley, the kindest person you could ever meet. And my dad also was very kind. It was confusing to me because they were kind, but my grandfather was super, super kind. But he had come from such trauma. And so if we use the lens of family constellation, using Carrie Gonia's lens of family constellation, the generational trauma behind all of that, behind my grandfather who had come from Russia and, all of these things, all of the trauma that was behind that, that would have come into my dad too. Again, then drinking and alcoholism and, drug addict and all of that. I mean, that's how, when I started looking at a lens that was very open to seeing all the wounds that had happened, that was very healing.
Yeah, absolutely. Understanding, that's another level of understanding where we come from. Like my grandparents were Italian immigrants. And from what I understood, because they lived in Argentina, so we didn't get to see them that often, but my cousin would tell us stories about what a brute my grandfather was. And when he wanted something from my grandmother, he would just grab it, take it, do what he wanted. There was never a please. There was never a thank you. He just was a brute. And so my dad was handled that way.
But your dad was never a brute.
He was never like that. And I think it was actually the Asperger's that kind of got him. He wasn't able to relate emotionally, but he didn't take that on.
Another question is, if he was your dad brutalized?
You know what? That's a good question. I believe I've asked him before. I think he got hit, once in a while, but it wasn't like extreme physical
Oh,
abuse.
because that's why I was wondering then, really, was it Asperger's or was it just trauma that was just unresolved? And
Yeah. I mean, it could have been a combination of both because I know that they had a very, traumatic upbringing, but it wasn't, there was just no love, no capacity for
all right.
love, no capacity, but it wasn't ongoing physical abuse.
But no capacity for love. So that kind of tracks to where we are with that.
Right.
Um, I'll never forget, Shirley. I had a woman that came in to see me after, ending another painful relationship. And she said to me, and I've heard this so many times, but she said, "Why do I always choose men that cannot love me back?" And so instead of talking about the relationship, I don't know why I said this. And being a psychic, I have no idea why I said this, but I said, "What happened at 8 years old?" I don't even know why I threw that out, but every once in a while I will do something like that. She
Yeah.
looked so surprised. And she said to me, "You know what? I would sit on the front porch every Friday waiting for my dad to pick me up. Sometimes he came, sometimes he didn't." And so she said that she had every Friday, she had to tell herself there had to be a good reason. Maybe he got busy. Maybe his car broke down. Maybe he'll be there next week. So she started to cry. And then she realized that she'd spent her entire adult life with the exact same situation.
Exactly. Because we are, what I call it emotional autopilot. And until the unconscious comes into conscious awareness, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to follow the same patterns. Childhood coping strategies become adult relationship strategies, without realizing it. Because and that's what your story illustrates.
Right.
The hope protected the child from feeling so awful about themselves, but it got in. I must not be important enough.
Yeah.
And this is kind of my lot in life. And so then she chose men who kind of did the same thing,
Right. That's so true. Well, and that's why instead of saying, like, what's wrong here, instead, what happened to me? Because I think that question changes everything, because suddenly, our choices make sense. When I was able to slow down enough that I could look back and reflect, I really understood the choices that I made and why and how I got there.
Right. And it's so important to really understand that, that there is a reason why you did what you did as a child. It's an adaptive strategy. It's survival adaptive strategy.
Right.
So healing, it doesn't help to blame your younger selves or to judge yourself for doing what you did to get through. I always use that word curiosity. Be curious about why I have this pattern, why I do this. And more often than not, if not always, it's the survival strategy that we created to survive our childhood.
Right. And in fact, and I'd like everybody to reflect on this. When you think about love, what feels more familiar to you? Having to earn it or simply receiving it? Do you find yourself working hard to be chosen? I have a lot of women that will say that to me. Trying to prove your value, trying to convince someone to stay? Or do you believe deep down that healthy love doesn't have to be earned? Because the answer to that question may reveal more about yourself than your childhood, I should say, than your dating history.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a profound exercise because part of the work isn't just healing the wounds, but it's also learning how to accept. Learning how to accept. Can I accept love? Many times we hear people say, well, this is the kind of guy I want, or even woman that I want. I want them to be like this, like this, like this. But when it comes down to it, we're not able to accept that because it's not in our repertoire. It's not what's familiar. So can you accept? How easy is it for you to receive?
Right.
Want to receive love, to receive consistency, to receive someone who says something and does it. That is such an important piece.
Oh, for sure. Another one that comes up again with so many people are success and perfection, like somebody who has to be perfect, right? And, or feeling that they have to accomplish just one more thing, before they finally feel enough.
Yeah.
So, and that is a connection between fathers, achievement, self-worth. And, Shirley, there's another side of the father wound that probably doesn't get talked enough about. And sometimes this wound does not show up in dating, but it shows up in achievement, or incredible success, or they'll earn degrees, or they'll build businesses, or they'll win awards, or they'll become executives or leaders or experts. And from the outside, everybody will say, well, you've made it. But on the inside, you may feel that you're still chasing that thing that you just can't catch, which is that father influence of how we define success.
Right. Exactly. And maybe you notice a pattern that every time that you had a success, that's when you got attention. That's when you were celebrated. And so now the association is success means attention. Success means that I'm loved.
Right.
And so then you'll continue, going for that because that's the association.
I've also had people say to me, their father had died, and they will say, I've worked so hard and he never said this to me. And so he knows it now. Yeah. He's aware of it now. So always know that, everybody, if you've lost a father, they always know on the other side.
That's what I find, one of the many things that I find so healing in your work, that to tell somebody that, I just can be so comforting. And so, because when they leave, we're left with now, there's no opportunity, there's no hope that I could have gotten that from him.
Right.
Part of the big grieving is that you lose hope that you can never get that from him. So for you to share that with someone,
it's very important that everybody knows that.
Yeah, so important.
And people may have a dream about their father, and they may not come and hug. They may not be that, but I want you to know, if that father figure or that father is there, he's paying a lot of attention.
Yeah. That's such an important thing to know.
Yeah. And so again, when we're talking about, working hard and secretly hoping that if you accomplish enough that you'll get the "I'm proud of you." Trust me, on the other side, that person will be.
Yeah. That's, because, when approval feels conditional, it can become a pathway to love. It's like that association. If I do this, then I get love.
Right.
So success temporarily boosts self-esteem and makes me feel good about myself. When the brain links performance with acceptance, then it almost can't stop, because at the core of attachment is to feel seen by someone else.
Yeah.
So if I felt seen, given my accomplishments, then why would I stop accomplishing? Right. And that can create perfectionism, overachievement, burnout. The people that are constantly doing.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember, Shirley, I've had this with a few men, when I would say, what was the first time you remember feeling that you had to prove yourself to the father? And without any hesitation, it's always been Little League. Little League. Yeah. And they told me about looking into the stands after every game, not to see if dad was smiling, to see if he was happy, to see if he had noticed.
Right.
That's a big deal, because I know when I go to the games with my grandchildren, I really pay attention, but I'm not the father, but father's there also, but like really paying attention. And I think that's so important.
Right. Exactly. And, as we're talking about kind of accomplishment, we're really talking about overachieving. Accomplishment is healthy. It makes us feel good about ourselves. It gives us a purpose. Yeah. It's believing that accomplishment determines your self-worth. That's where the problem is.
Right. Well, and if nobody was there for you, would you still want in this life? Would you still choose your career? Would you still chase that dream? You know what I mean? Would you still buy that house? Would you still work 80 hours a week? It's kind of something to think about.
Right. Yeah. How would you be if you didn't have that motivating you?
Right.
Because there's a big difference. One of my teachers also taught me that the result can be the same, but there's a big difference whether it's coming from an unhealed wound,
Yeah.
or from just who you are and what your values are.
Right. Right.
Big difference where it's coming from. The result can be the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you heard this one? Because I know you and I have had so many different conversations about different situations that we've known about. But I remember having a woman that said to me, everybody thinks I'm extremely confident. But she would say that she was afraid that somebody was, like living in imposter syndrome or something. And so I would say, well, what happened, when you were young? And she'd say, if she brought home a report card, have you heard this one? If she got an A, her dad would actually say, why didn't you get an A plus?
Yeah.
That one. If she got second place, why didn't you get first? I mean,
Right.
Nothing was ever terrible, but nothing was ever enough.
Right.
And then living for that, trying to, like you have to earn that one.
Right. Exactly. And that's tough, because that now is it kind of sets you up to never feel okay.
Exactly. But what's important now is that for the fathers that are here and they're listening, it's not, again, about guilt. It's about opportunity, because it is actually never, ever too late unless you're past. Then you have to come through in a dream and do it, which I've heard many, many a time. So to tell your daughter or your son that you're so proud of them, I think that is such a big deal. I think it's such a big deal, and it's not too late to do that. I think I actually heard the other day, from the mother's perspective, went to one of my clients, and she was passing away. She passed away a month later, but she said to her daughter, the mother was so difficult, but you can put this in the terms of a father, so difficult. And she said, I just want you to know something. I really am proud of you. And it changed everything from my client, everything that she could say that.
Yeah. And it's so important, because the research is now showing that it's not kind of blanket statements. It's more, I'm proud of how you dealt with that, with that problem.
Right.
I'm proud of how you figured out that math problem. So you tell them what it is, something specific about them, so they have something to hold on to, and not just kind of a blanket. That was great.
I think it's really important that we do that, and I want to, before we finish tonight, let's talk about, with the father wound, about safety, because long before a child understands anything, the thing they want to make sure is, are they safe in the world?
Yeah.
Is there somebody bigger than me that will protect me? Can I trust the people I love? And when that foundation is shaken, it doesn't just affect childhood, it affects everything through life and all connections.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So what do fathers represent here?
Well, they represent, the mother represents the nurturing love. The father represents protection.
Yeah. And safety and structure.
And absolutely. And safety and structure. And so when you feel that your dad will protect you above and beyond anything, you can, take on the world and be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You can take on the world. It's so true. So children they don't need inconsistency, and they don't need unpredictability.
Right. Exactly. Children don't stop needing safety. They simply begin trying to create it themselves.
Okay.
And then that is an adult that can become hypervigilance, controlling or fearful vulnerability, because because they don't have the experience of someone, of that person keeping them safe. And so now it's all on them.
Right.
And so if I feel vulnerable, there's going to be no one there to help me. And so all of a sudden there's a fear of vulnerability. Yeah. So it's, and again, all these, who we are as adults in pieces that we notice aren't what we love about ourselves, they're adaptations, they're survival strategy adaptations. And I think that's an important way of viewing them. So it creates, it takes away blame from yourself. It creates understanding of what happened.
Right.
And therefore, then how you can shift it and how you can change it, healing it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, again, for everybody, if tonight's conversation touched you, share it with somebody who might need to hear this.
Yeah.
I think that's really important because you never know, whose healing might begin with a single conversation. So, and also I want to remind everybody, Shirley, that you and I have a big event coming up on, let's see, it's October 24th. It's October 24th. And you can find us at kelleewhite.com under events, and which is going to be we're very excited about this. It's October 24th at 7:30 p.m. at the Wayfair Theater in Highland Park, Illinois. And we're going to be with Jen Weigel. And it's going to be so fun because we're going to explore that evening, like the intersection of psychology, spirituality, healing, the unseen world. And we're going to do a live questions and answers with all three of us. And then I'm going to do a gallery reading, which is where I'll do lots of readings for people in the audience. And we will have a book signing and meet and greet and all of that. But we'll have some really deep conversations and some connections and community. So if, please come and join us if you are in the Chicago area. I think it's going to be a wonderful night, Shirley. I always look so forward to doing that with you.
Oh, it's going to be wonderful. I mean, it's going to
be so fun.
It's a wonderful conversation and answering questions and just, it's going to be great.
Right. It's so funny. Somebody just said there's a really good song from an Austin Powers movie, Shirley, called Daddy Wasn't There. Seriously, psychologically astute, but funny at the same time.
That is so funny.
So Jen Weigel, who's going to be with us, Jen Weigel is a spiritual teacher herself. And I work a lot with Jen Weigel. I do a lot of different events with Jen. She's written many books, and she's just a terrific person. And she's from the Chicago area. So she knows a lot of people that will be there for us. So I think that's going to be fun. And some people are talking about tonight's show, Shirley, and they're saying that they learned boundaries. And that is very true because, again, if you have had a challenging father, boundaries would be very important. I had to learn boundaries too.
Yeah. And if that father continues to be challenging, then boundaries are so important.
And Shirley, somebody said, and what if you've had a stepdad and a biological dad? Well, guess what? I did. I had them both. I could say they were both doozies. Very opposite people. I don't think my mom could have gone any more opposite than my father. So, but I have a wonderful stepfather, and so I've had them both.
Both. I only had one.
You only had one.
One
was enough.
We call him, in a kind of, as a term of endearment, in Spanish, we call him the cheese, he's just like a block of cheese. So in English, it would be more like just a block of clay.
Block of clay.
That wasn't cruel or mean or anything, just kind of there.
Well, here's a quick question before we go, Shirley. Do different relationships create different perspectives of the same person? Oh, yeah.
They do. Yeah, because a mother's influence is different than a father's influence. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Very true. Oh, my gosh. Well, everybody, please join us next Tuesday. We have a great show next Tuesday. And then this Thursday on Ask Me Anything, I have a very special guest. So that's going to be a fun show on Thursday. So please join us. And again, tomorrow's a big eclipse. So take very good care of yourself during these eclipses that we have. And tomorrow's a big one. So, all right, Shirley, it was great to see you tonight, Shirley. And I look forward to seeing everybody next Tuesday for Psychology and the Soul.
We will see you next week. Have a nice evening, everyone.